Welcome to Tabletop Gaming with Juice. Today, I'm talking about a video that is back on topic. And what I mean by that is it's all about tabletop games and none of that other stuff. So with that said, this was inspired by a post over in the Tabletop RPG one-shot group that David Daniel Ducker, Triple D as we call him, had posted. Now his post was about, I'm going to pull it up real quick. It's basically about how he preps and how the reason why he feels the need to to basically keep certain players out of his groups. He's very selective in choosing people because as a DM he doesn't feel like putting in a lot of effort into prep, and he feels that he needs to make up for that by doing a lot of prep. And I was thinking about it, and I talked to a couple other DMs and GMs real quick and asked them what they do. I prep for one session, I'll prep between 1 and 2 hours, and that doesn't count painting miniatures or terrain or anything like that. That is just, sitting down with a piece of paper and writing out what's going to happen. Normally I'll type up a page in Word. It's a little quicker for me. I'll print it, and then I'll write monster stats in between monster, animal, creature, person stats in between the paragraphs so that I know, or I'll do it on the back of the sheet of paper. Something along those lines. In fact, my game I ran the other night on my channel, just simple, looks like this. I've got bullet points. In between them, I wrote down stats. Not a big deal. All right. And usually the stats are the very last thing I even come up with. So that's what I do. Now, this video, though, is about what I have found to be the perfect formula for fun when it comes to tabletop role-playing games. And it's based on when I started getting into tabletop RPGs, I always thought the DM made the fun at the table. Without a bad DM, you'd have a terrible game. With a great DM, you'll have a great game. I was wrong. I actually think the DM is the least important aspect of a good game now. So, with that, what do I think is a good formula? Well, if you have minimum 2 players who can interact with each other in a fun way, that can carry a game to be good. To have a great game, I think you need at least 3 players who can interact socially. And that could be any combination. It could be 2 players and a DM. It could be just 3 players. And I think you can have a fantastic game, a fantastic campaign with just 3 people. Now, you can have other players that are involved, but they don't have to be great if you've got those 3 great people. And what I mean by that is, for example, if those 3 people are playing off each other, as long as the DM stays out of the way, you're good. You're golden. As long as he's not stifling anybody and saying, pushing things past that. So you've got, we'll look back at my game a couple days ago. I had 4 players that were all interacting. I wasn't on my A game. I just stood back and let them RP together. I let them feed off of each other. And in my opinion, that makes the game better. The minute that they're RPing, if I, butt in and speed things up because I want to make sure the game's done in 2 hours, well, I'm going to ruin the fun for them. They're not going to get as deep into their character. The setting isn't going to get as deep. It's just going to be vanilla. And I think that that's the formula. So 3 people, it doesn't matter how you do it. If you have 1 great DM and 2 good players, and then you have a couple other players, that's fine. Those players don't have to be great for that to be a great game. Now, eventually, the good interaction between those 3 people is going to rub off on those other people, and they're going to up their game, and they're going to become great. And then they're going to take their great play style over to other games. I feel like that's how I've learned, too. I've played in a lot of games where I was the weakest link, and I've been in games with great players, and watching them and, the DM and stuff feed off each other helped me up my game. In fact, before the Provokers, I would say I was not a good player. I still don't think I am. I think I have a lot to work on. But I think being in the Provokers has helped me because I think Matt is an excellent DM. I think Barker and Tim are great players. I think Nate is definitely a great up and coming player. I think he's starting to really explore himself, and I've seen him grow a lot because he's played in my home game with me, and I met him before he ever had played an RPG, and he's really loosened up and got more into it. So I'm very fortunate because I would say before that I was not very good, and I've learned a lot from those guys. I've learned a lot from playing with guys like Andrew Knapp. So it's there's a lot to it, but I don't think we have to make it more difficult than it is. You can have all newbies and still have great games as long as people are trying. And I think as long as you have people that will interact with each other, for example, me and Durgan, or me and Tim, Brasswick and Durgan, though, interact even during combat, right? Something that in a lot of games you see people just rolling dice and just that's it, and selling and telling you numbers. Well, me and Tim throw in some dialogue. We describe our descriptions, whether we're trying to one up each other or copy each other and do it better or whatever. We do a lot of things like that make it better, that make it enjoyable for us to be in combat and rolling dice. And I think everybody can learn from that. I try to RP my combat. I try to RP dialogue. I'm not always the strongest when it comes to dialogue. And part of that's because I don't have the best memory. I don't remember a lot of setting things. Or sometimes I don't remember a lot of names. And that's how I am in real life. I forget people's names and stuff all the time. So I have to write notes. And when I'm in a game, I usually write notes. And that'll help me remember. But the important formula is I think you need at least 3 people. You could have 2 and get by. But I think eventually, if it's just 2 people, eventually it gets boring. Not for necessarily those 2 people, but other people. You start to feel like, oh, well, those 2 people are hogging the game. When you have 3 people, you're good. And usually when you have good players, they'll bring other people in. For example, in the Provokers, we don't steal each other's spotlight. We actually try to bring others into the spotlight. For example, in our last Provokers game, Barker's character, called my guy out on snoring. It's not something I had ever described. I didn't say, oh, my guy snores a lot. It's just something that Barker added to the game about my character, and it helped bring a new element to my character, and it got me involved. It just, all this stuff. So I think it's good when you have players, just 2 or 3 good players that can pull other players into the interactions. So that's my formula. I don't care how you do it. 2 people you can get by on and have a good game. 3 people and you will have great games, great campaign, no way around it. And it doesn't matter if they put a lot of time into their backstory or anything like that. As long as they're putting in a full effort and interacting with each other as characters, interacting with the NPCs, even if the DM isn't really comfortable interacting, a good player can pull that out of a DM. Oh, you're in a city. Okay. Who's near me? You've got a merchant, you got a peasant, and a guard. Oh, okay, great. I want to go up to the merchant. Okay. Boom, you start interacting with that merchant. The DM didn't necessarily want that to happen, didn't prepare for it, doesn't have a name, doesn't have anything about this person. And now you're forcing them to come up with it on the spot, and you're interacting. And then in the middle of this interaction, you might even turn to one of your players, hey, come on over here, I bet you they got something for you. Boom. And now you're dragging them into it. So you're getting people involved. I think it's an important aspect of a game when you see someone at the table who's not doing much. Maybe they're only doing stuff during combat, or, they're only doing stuff when it suits their skills. They're looking at their sheet and they're like, well, I'm a rogue. I don't have high charisma, so I probably wouldn't talk to anybody. I'll just sit here and wait. Well, you drag them into it. You force them to come out of their comfort zone and start talking, and then eventually they just start having fun. So again, I think 2 to 3 good players is all you need, and one of them can be the DM, but it doesn't have to be. I think DMs are a little bit overrated, and as long as you're not screwing things up, you'll have a great game. So, don't stifle your players. Don't put a necktie on them and tighten it real hard. You know what I mean? Leave it loose, leave it open, and just see how things go. I think that's the trick to having a really good game. And so, yeah, the ultimate formula: 2 to 3 good players. That's it. That's all that matters. You shouldn't need to do more than an hour or two of prep. And what kind of things should you prep? Well, you could prep a few different things. You just prep where the players are at the start. Okay, that's the foundation right there. If the players ended the last session and you let them, you just end it there before they travel back, then that's where they're at. They're at the cave that they left off at. Or maybe you let them travel back all the way. If they're at the cave, you can fast forward and say, yeah, you guys found a way to get all the treasure back. You're in the city, you just sold it all back. This is what you got if you chose to sell it all, or whatever. Boom. Now you're starting at that city. You can speed things up to get to a spot where you want. Then from there, you plan the next part. So what possibly has changed? Right? Boom, boom, boom. 2 or 3 bullet points. So maybe maybe there's a festival going on, so all the merchants are closed. Maybe the players' favorite bar is out of beer, so the shipment didn't come in, or whatever. So now you got these seeds, right? So now you just put a couple seeds in there. Players can find out about them and do something with that. So that's what you got. You've got the seeds. Well, then you just plan, what do those seeds lead to? Okay, they need to go find out what happened to the person delivering the beer. All right, so you know which way they're going. They're going to a certain city. So you can plan an encounter somewhere, and you can plan the main encounter. You can plan random encounters, 2 or 3 random encounters that might happen on the road. And then what's going to happen when they get to that city. So there's one possible whole gaming session, and you have 2 more that you can prep off of the other 2 seeds you've given. Boom. That's it. That took me 5 minutes on the spot telling you in this video to plan 2 possible things so far. So from that, you then figure out your close. So you figure out your monster stats. Maybe you write in some names for the different characters they're going to come across, and maybe do some mapping. You can do all of that in under an hour. You've got a full session fleshed out. You got NPCs for them to deal with or to socialize with, and you know where they're going. You don't have to force them to do anything. The players are going to, especially if it has to do with beer. I've found anytime you include beer in an RPG game, people go nuts over beer and RPGs. They're like, oh my gosh, we got to go save the beer. It doesn't matter what the hell else is going on. If you put beer in there, players want to go figure out what's wrong. Why is there no beer? Let's go fix this. So, anyways, that's another part of the magic formula. Throw some beer in there. But yeah, the main point of this video was really just you need 2 or 3 good players. Prepping, I think 1 to 2 hours for a game session is more than enough, unless you're running marathon sessions. But yeah, I think for a 3, 4, 5 hour session, maybe 1 to 2 hours of prep. 2 hours, I think, is a lot. I don't think I've ever prepped more than 2.5 hours, ever. Unless it was an initial first session where I'm also doing world building. But again, I don't even consider world building prep. So, anyways, with that said, I hope you guys enjoyed this. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Please be sure to like, comment, subscribe. Share this video with your friends. Let me know if you think I'm onto something with the 2 to 3 good players in a group, and that being able to carry a game and rub off on other players. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. And maybe you guys spend more time prepping. Explain to me why 1 to 2 hours isn't enough. Explain to me why you feel the need to do a lot more prep. I think over prepping is a problem, because then I feel like you pigeonhole and you force your players down a single path. So yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts though. Please leave it in the comments below. Feel free to do a video response. What do you think the magical formula is for a good game session and a good campaign? I would love to hear it. I'm sure a lot of my viewers would love to hear it. And If you do a video response, I'll give you a shout out. I think I'm going to start doing weekly shout outs. So anyone who's done video responses to my videos, or anyone who is, I think, an up and coming channel. So I want to give back a little bit more to the community. Start raising people up. I want to focus more on the positive. So if you are doing something good, I want to give you your props. So thank you for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Like, comment, subscribe. Check out my channel or my website, rpgjuice.com, and my campaign that I just started running. I think it's a good example of a DM staying out of the way and having at least 2 to 3 good players that can carry it. And I was not one of them. So with that said, go check that out. Thank you. Bye-bye.